Hi there. So this is going to be a Milky Way video. Been wanting to do one of these for quite some time and kind of got free reign for a design a little while ago. So I'm going to go for it. So we're going to use 5 colors. They're all from France today. We're going to do Sunflower. It's a slightly chunky, not super chunky. You Are My Sunshine has great sparkle. Aladdin and Aladdin Chunky. And I'm thinking I'm going to work in some Calypso. So I have a layer of pretty thick epoxy. It took me a little while to get set up after I mixed it, which is not ideal, but whatever. So we're going to do one color at a time, and we're going to scoop it on with this. So I have my slowest turning turner right now. So I'm going to go kind of at this angle here. Got my epoxy on there pretty thin. Not super duper thin, but definitely not so thick that I'm going to have issues with my epoxy just kind of soaking up my glitter. The disadvantage to the slow turner is I have to wait for it to come back around a lot longer. So I'm just going to show you the first couple of colors on regular speed, and then I'm going to kick it into high gear. So I've got 2 fines, 2 chunkies, and a semi-chunky. It's still considered chunky, it's just not as big of a cut as some of the others are, which that's okay. Your areas here don't have to be perfectly even. In fact, you'll probably get a little movement. One of the steps will be to add some drizzles of white over the next layer. After we do this, we'll epoxy and then do the drizzle effect. I'll probably end up putting a solid color on the bottom. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do here. So let me put this back in the jar. Hopefully I don't get very much cross-contamination. Alright, so, that's no bueno. So I'm going to do a chunky now, and then I'll kick it onto hyperlapse and do the other colors. But I'm just going to do the chunky just right next to this. If you don't have a little spoon like this, you can use like your Cricut spatula or pretty much anything kind of flat and easy to disperse it. If you try and pour it on straight from your jar, that may work for you, but I would be concerned with it just kind of hitting in spots that you didn't really want it to go. So basically you're just going to do this little swirl. It doesn't matter which direction the swirls are headed. If your turner goes the other way, that's okay. Alright, so I'm going to do this over and over. I'll show you each color before I start, and then I'll have a picture of the colors at the end, but they're going to be the same. The only question is this one. I may or may not get Calypso worked in there. So let's speed things up. All right, so we have this nice and cured now. I did it last night. I went ahead this morning before heading to work. I spray coated this really good with just my Rust-Oleum 2X clear. Just because a lot of times the chunky glitters like to repel the epoxy. So that's the only thing I've done so far off camera, just to kind of help this process along. But like I said, I just want this a little thicker. I don't want it falling off, but that's going to help need less attention. Because with this chunky glitter, if I was to put the mica powder drizzles right on top of that, it's going to look really lumpy, and I don't want that. So I'm going to do this layer and one other. The second layer won't take very much epoxy at all, but that will be when we're dropping our mica powder, or our mica powder tinted epoxy. I can't get that sentence out of my mouth. So right now I'm just going super thick, trying to prevent spreading this really out of bounds and into the other colors. You can see a few colors, a few pieces here and there. That's okay. It's not going to be all that bad of a issue. But we're going to do a thick layer now, and then tomorrow night when we're doing the next step, we'll do another layer, not super thick, but thick enough that it's going to help camouflage some of the lumps of the chunky glitter. I failed to push that down like I normally would. A couple of reasons. I ran out of time before bedtime, and because my epoxy was getting a little too far into the curing process. So we're going to speed up this part, and then we'll be back to do the next part in just a bit. So here we are. I've got the epoxy layer on there. I did go ahead and put one more coat last night before sanding it. It was just really, really chunky, and I really didn't feel like it was going to give me a good result. I didn't pat it down like I should have. Like I said, partly because it was getting late, and partly because my epoxy was a little too cured. So I've got a fresh layer, not super duper thick, but not thin by any means. I'm working on splitting up a few milliliters of epoxy into these little cups. And when I say a few, I mean like 5 max of each color. Got these 3 here. So I'm going to, let's move that forward just a bit. I'm gonna add a little bit of mica. This is just a set that I got at Michael's. It is not the best quality, but it works for what I'm using it for. If you need something with super duper high pigment, it's probably worth looking into a glitter supplier for that, because they're gonna have a much better product. So we're just gonna put a little bit here. You can kind of see right there. Not a lot, but enough to give it the color and the shimmer. We're going more for shimmer than we are color, honestly, because we're gonna drizzle this in a minute. So we're just gonna stir it up and set it aside. I think I've only ever opened one of these. I've had them forever. So now we're gonna do sky blue. There was one in the kit that was called blue green, but I wanted the sky blue. I thought it would be pretty. So just drop that in there. Stir it up. Get all the little chunks of powder in there mixed up. The advantage to letting it sit for a minute is a lot of the air bubbles that are in there will rise up. And the last one, we're gonna do purple, called Reflex Violet. It really doesn't take a lot to tint this epoxy. Some mica powders I think are higher quality than others. I mean, it's the same thing as eyeshadow, essentially. So if you think about how some eyeshadows are way more pigmented, like a Urban Decay or a Morphe palette or something like that, is going to be way more pigmented than something maybe you get at a drugstore. I'm not a makeup specialist. I barely wear makeup at all. So that's my very limited knowledge and understanding of micas. So we've got this rotating the direction that it was yesterday, and we're literally just going to drizzle each color on here. Make sure you have something underneath your cup to catch your drips, because you will have drips. I didn't want that swirl there. That's what I get for being impatient. I do have some lumps on my cup from that chunky glitter. I'm not super worried about it. I think by the time it's all said and done, it'll be kind of camouflaged. I'm getting impatient, and so it's not giving me the lines that I want. My own fault. I don't want a ton of color. I really like the glitter. It's growing on me a lot, and I don't want to camouflage it too much. I've definitely seen some mica powders that made a much more prominent white coloring. But like I said, this is just from Michael's. We're going to heat this up in a minute and kind of give it a little bit of blending. So I'm not super worried about these like that. Just trying to give it a good even mixture. Okay, let's move on to another color. I accidentally made the most purple. It probably should have been more. Once again, I'm getting impatient. Good grief. I should have mixed more white but I wasn't paying attention to my parts. That's okay. And this is just a metal stir stick I got off of Amazon. You could use something like this little silicone stir stick. You could use a popsicle stick. I've seen that on some people's posts. I am touching my cup. That might be taboo, but it's working for me to get the direction that I want. That wouldn't probably work very well if you didn't have a layer of epoxy on there, but this allows it to slide around a little bit better. Let's spread that up. Okay, let's move on to the purple. Next time I make one of these, I'm going to make it with a much higher quality mica powder. Or maybe just mix a whole lot more in. But theoretically, you shouldn't have to mix a ton of mica powder in to get the job done. Trying to direct that a little bit. Need a little something on the bottom too, so let's put a little blob there so I can start swirling. I know there are a lot of cup makers that will use like 6 or 7 different mica powders, and they make some beautiful cups, but I didn't want anything too busy on this one. Okay, one more. So now we are going to use our heat to kind of make this swirl a little bit differently than what we have on there now. So we're going to use just a regular heat gun. You can use an embossing gun if you want, but if you have a heat gun, go for it. So this is going to be a little bit loud for a minute. I don't want it so hot that my epoxy is super duper runny. But that's how we're going to get some movement. Make sure that that tip doesn't touch anything that it can melt. I've learned my lesson on that several times. Let that turn for just a minute. I didn't get any of the blue or the white on the bottom, so let's add that. I know that was super clumpy, but I want it to roll around on there. I didn't get this quite hot enough, so I'm gonna go a little bit longer. Okay. I did this a little bit. So when you're doing the heat, you want to hold your heat gun at least 4 inches or so. You can end up burning your epoxy on accident. I'm just letting this slide around a little bit. The idea is to break up the solid line, but not so runny that it literally takes away your shape completely. That's a little too hot right there. It's kind of not really a wrong way to do Milky Ways. It's just your personal preference, really. Alright. So we're just going to let this turn for a bit, kind of disperse and kind of swirl around. I might even turn it the other direction in a minute. Kind of give it a little different vibe. But that's the gist of it. Come check on this in a little while. Let's go ahead and turn this, because those spots that are hot, too hot, they're just going to end up making vertical lines or horizontal lines, and I don't really want that. Yeah, so we're just going to let this sit and turn for, I don't know, probably 3-4 hours, since it's on there pretty thick overall. And then we'll come and check on it in a little bit. So none of my videos would be complete without something going wrong from what I had originally planned, right? I don't think I've made a video one that has been what I wanted. So these ended up separating in a lot of spots. It's pretty, but it's not what I wanted. So I have just a couple milliliters of tinted epoxy, no mica powder, no alcohol ink, nothing like that, that I'm just gonna drizzle. I'm gonna try and go super thin so that I don't end up with too many big blobs like that end up making horizontal stripes. That's not what I want. Oh my gosh, I feel like that guy, what's his name, that does all the fishing videos, Bill Dance or something, Vance Dance. Like every outtake is probably how his day goes. What a mess. So anyways, that's all I'm going to do, is add a few more of these little white swirls on here, just to kind of give me more of what I was going for. That's the kind of drip I'm trying to make right there. Why can't that always happen? I'm just doing a few of those. Not a ton. I don't plan on using all 5 milliliters of this mixture here. I might, but I probably won't. This isn't quite cured from earlier, so it's just sticky enough that this should adhere pretty nicely. But it's not so sticky that, or tacky, that I can't do this to kind of straighten up my lines there. I definitely feel like I need my own blooper reel. I know that these aren't going to stay in lines, but without having kind of the start like that, it'll at least have a better chance at not being quite so wild. So my mom got a new dog. Mom and Dad got a new dog recently. And so she's been so anti having a dog in her house for so long that we are just eating it up how much she is smitten with this little Yorkie puppy. And so she is going to get a cup that says Dog Mom or Tonto's Mom or whatever. Haven't decided yet, but since this didn't quite turn out like I wanted for that customer order, it's probably going to end up being hers. It's pretty perfect. It's her color palette for sure. Okay, I think that's pretty good. I know that this isn't exactly what I was going for, but that's okay. It just means no one else will have a cup like this in the history of ever. But I like to not delusion myself into thinking that anything I try is going to be perfect, no matter if I've done them 1,000 times. I have a wood grain and glitter cup that I'm working on that I literally am like fighting with, even though I've done 3 or 4 of them fairly recently. It's just not playing nice. So I'm just going to do this a little bit more off camera. I'm sure it's really boring watching this part. So I'm going to just do a little bit more, and then I'll hit it with just a little heat to pop the bubbles, but I don't really want it swirling at all. And then we'll touch base in a little bit. So this is what it looks like salvaged. I can't believe I did that after saying something always goes wrong. 2 things went wrong. So when you don't have a layer on here for it to kind of spread and break up, it literally just sits there like a bunch of worms, or worse. I mean, it looked horrible, but I salvaged it pretty good. Can't really see. Every once in a while you'll see one of the other ones kind of peek through, but it's not that bad. It's pretty good. So we're done with this. That's my version of the Milky Way. Mistakes and all, but I like it. I'm going to show it to the person that was asking for this general concept of colors. See how she likes it, and if she does, great, and if she doesn't, it's for my mom. We'll see how the end result is when I show the customer. So anyways, stay tuned for the next couple seconds. I'll show you how bad it looked. I have a little video clip, and it's not pretty. So stay tuned for that. I'll post the link for everything that I used in the description. I'll put the heat gun. I don't think they have this turner on Amazon anymore. I'll double check. I feel like I didn't do that. I didn't find it last time I was looking. These little mica powders, like I said, are from Michael's. It was like 30 bucks, but I'm 100% positive that I used a coupon. And glitters overall, in the grand scheme, or in the end of it, we used these 2 colors. These 2 colors. and these 2 colors. So 6 colors total, 3 mica powders, sky blue, reflex violet, and blanco pearl, and that to kind of salvage it since the micas broke up. Like I said, I'm not in love with that particular mica brand. I know that I have better ones from Franz. I've got a couple of colors, but not any of the colors that I wanted. So I just went with what I already had. So if you have any questions, leave it in the comments. I'll do my best to answer it. There's a lot of really great Milky Way tutorials out there. Go for it. Look them up. Every technique is going to be slightly different. Each person does it a little bit different. So it's really just personal preference. If you like my channel, please consider subscribing. Turn on your notifications. I've got several tutorials in the works, so you'll see those rolling out here pretty soon. Thanks so much. Have a good one.